Ooh, sorry, loud mic. All right, good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, go through roll call real quick here. Commissioner Parker,
Present.
Commissioner Shanks,
Present.
Commissioner Townsend,
Present.
Commissioner Harrison,
Here.
Chairman Wiggins is here, Vice Chair Fizer,
Present.
Secretary Smith is absent, looks like Commissioner Key is absent, and Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
Wonderful, thank you. No personal appearances scheduled, so move on to item 5, our consent agenda. One item, item A, the approval of minutes from the February 17th, 2026 meeting. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of that item, please.
I'll make a motion to accept the approval of minutes.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Fizer, second by Mayor Turnbow to to approve the minutes from the February 17th, 2026 meeting. Any discussion of the topic? Seeing none, all in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. Opposed? Abstentions? Understood. Thank you, sir. That will pass 6-0-1. No unfinished business this evening. We do have one item for new business, which is item A, the 26002 38th Amendment to the Unified Development Code. This does require a public hearing, which I will officially open at 6:02 p.m. And with that, I would turn it over to city staff, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, before you this evening is a planning application staff report for the 38th Amendment to the Unified Development Code. This amendment creates new standards for single and two-family subdivisions of 10 or more lots, aimed at creating better diversity in architecture and form by discouraging monotony in our residential subdivisions. We created a brief presentation here to kind of go through this process, as well as the work that's been done thus far. That'll be on your screens as well as on the overhead projector here. Okay. So again, this is for single and two-family residential design standards. That's the 38th Amendment to the Unified Development Code. Here's a timeline between February of 2025 and January 26th. City staff met with council and the Planning and Zoning Commission to discuss concerns regarding the repetition of architecture and form in some of our recent single and two-family developments. During that time period, staff also met with the Kansas City Home Builders Association, commercial real estate lenders, and city design professionals to review draft amendments that staff was writing. And lastly, staff also met with roughly 24 builders that work here in the community or have in recent time to gather their feedback on the draft version of this amendment, which was then later conveyed to the City Council at a work session. So what are these single and two-family residential design standards? Staff summarizes this as balanced development regulation that aims to create diversity in architecture throughout a subdivision by focusing on form, which prioritizes human-scaled elements. What these amendments are not are standards that regulate the types of homes being built, and they are not standards which set minimums for size or price points. The standards are tools to foster more diversity in our neighborhoods. They are tools to create places that feel more authentic. And finally, they are tools to encourage thoughtful design that helps shape the community into an environment residents are proud of. The intention behind requiring minimum dimensions for the entry features is to create enough space for gatherings to socialize with one's neighbors. The entry features provide an opportunity for residents to reclaim their relationship with their front yards, streets, and the community around them. Doing our research, we kind of came across just some social media posts about kind of what we're kind of seeing nationally, and also we've seen kind of here locally in terms of housing product and things of that nature within the last decade or so. And we thought that this was kind of a, speaking to kind of what some of the concerns are. That we've kind of moved from a period in time which was very different, but where, you know, housing was being created for more of the end user, versus kind of what it seems that the product is more focused on these days, which is kind of the mass production of kind of the same, you know, buildings and whatnot over and over again. So we just thought that this was a kind of a fitting image to kind of summarize some of the things and the concerns that we are hearing. So when we did last meet in the joint work session, there was some discussion around the landscape standards, and we set this point system up with a minimum threshold of 40 points, with different types of plants having different point values. And there were some concerns around, you know, is it realistic for people to meet that minimum requirement? Will it be difficult to do? There was another conversation about on smaller lots, will this like maybe overclutter or be difficult to meet? And so we kind of took those comments and went back through at those kind of different angles and started thinking about it, had some other conversations. So we brought this kind of revised version back. While the revision is relatively small, we did want to point out what we had done there. We think that the 40 is still a good point number to still reach for a minimum on each of the lots. However, we did go through and differentiate between, for the shrubs and grass category, to have a 1 gallon and 3 gallon option, and then have a 1 point associated with the 1 gallon and 3 point associated with the 3 gallon option. We think that this will encourage the planting of more mature materials and help the likelihood of that initial survival once they're planted into the ground. We also feel like this will allow for better filling of space along the front of a home. It allows the points to be met more quickly, all the while the 1 gallon variation is still allowed for the builder to choose if that's so what they choose to do. On this slide here, starting at the top left and working to the right and then finally down to the bottom, these are of, the top two are some of the smaller lots that we see, and then the bottom one is a more average sized lot in terms of its width. On the top left, you'll see a house that has greatly exceeded the minimum point value. Now, I will mention that after the fact, there have been additional plantings put on this property by the homeowner, but as a visual to show you that even far exceeding the 40 minimum can still be done tastefully on a smaller lot. That can still occur. The house or the photo to the right of that, where they are just above the minimum 40 point threshold, shows about what that would potentially look like for a new home and meeting that landscape requirement. And then finally, down on the bottom is a home that is about half of what is required for a minimum, and that's shown there on that image. So you can get a kind of sense of what this would kind of foster in terms of what we're going to be expecting to see from landscape materials for new homes. I thought we'd just help that. That'd be a good visual aid. So lastly, just to kind of summarize the 38th Amendment, there's really 3 different main categories we're looking at. The first 2 are required variations in lot widths for these subdivisions of 10 or more lots. Those are in increments of 5 feet at minimum. They could be more than 5-foot increments, but there is going to be this required variation. There's also a required variation in the entry features themselves, which is spelled out in the proposed amendment, and then also the improved landscape standards. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, sir. As always, any members of the commission have any initial questions for city staff?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, please.
I know we talked about this quite a bit at our joint meeting with the city council in a work session, But can you tell us a little bit more about the modifications, not just for the landscaping, but for the elevations with regard to some of the differences and the that might be described as anti-monotony?
Yeah, let me open up this section here right quick. So, let's take a look. So, we're addressing the front facades of homes through a variety of ways. We've spelled out 3 different kind of overarching design features that can be utilized for a subdivision. That can be a combination of porches, stoops, or even an occasional courtyard. We tried to write it to where it had a lot of flexibility in it, to where you know, a designer could get creative either by providing a covered porch, an uncovered porch, whether that porch is recessed from the front facade or it's projecting past the primary front facade of the building. Also, the materials of that feature provide variety as well. So there's really a combination of different ways that you can mix and match how you address the front of the home. What we've seen in recent time is kind of this expansion of home or our housing stock, where over the years the front door has become less and less prominent on the face of the home, and it's been taken over by the garage face, which everybody enjoys having a garage on their home, so we're not trying to necessarily grapple with whether or not someone should have a garage on the front of their home. It's more about trying to retain the entry feature of the home as the pedestrian entrance and bring that back because we think it has a lot of value in many different ways for a neighborhood, but especially when talking about kind of that experience that you have when you're traveling down a street and you see the repetition of garage doors, kind of especially on those more dense subdivisions that we have in the community, that really becomes repetitive. So these standards, as it speaks to the entry features, would really help kind of provide some diversity in what you're seeing most from the public realm or the street side. And we think that that could go a long ways in aiding some of those concerns that we have.
So you might still have a development that the builder wants to focus on, say, half a dozen different models. Those half a dozen different models change up quite a bit when you talk about materials used, setbacks, other variety of options for covering, stone, siding, however they try to change up those features. But what we're trying to accomplish is not have 3 exact replicas in a row, correct? I mean, even though they might be different colors, that might not be something that we want to see replicated in a neighborhood, but they can still hold it to like 6 models, but then you can change up those 6 models in variations to help with that anti-monotony as well, right?
Yeah, you could most certainly do that. When this process started, for the first couple of months, we were kind of going down the path of what we were seeing in some of our adjacent communities of taking more of the approach of setting a requirement for different home types based on the size of the subdivision. And as we were kind of going down that route, we started to kind of find and receive feedback that that didn't necessarily provide, that didn't really get what communities had set out to get from that. And that sometimes the different floor plans can still be very similar, especially from what you're engaging with out on the front end. So that wasn't necessarily the most kind of successful approach we thought. So we continued along, and we ended up coming to a set of standards that focus less on requiring, what it is, whatever the home type is that you're wanting to build, and focusing more on what do we have as the general public, like what's our experience with neighborhoods when we're walking the sidewalk or driving the street, and that's going to be what we see from the street. And so we kind of shifted away from regulating different types of floor plans and things of that nature, and more into really getting at the core of what we engage with as the general public throughout our neighborhoods and the adjoining neighborhoods and things of that nature. So floor plans and all that stuff is still wide open. The developer can work through those, but when it gets out to the front of the building, that's where these standards are going to apply most heavily. And even potentially on the side, because we do contemplate things like a side porch as well, or if the porch happens to wrap a little bit, that would all go all the way back to the platting of the subdivision to make sure your lot's big enough to handle, taking up that additional space on the side for the porch as a structure as well. So it really focuses on what can be seen from the public realm, the street, the right-of-way, more so than, the layout of the interior of the home.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Shanks?
What would trigger the city to look at these rules? Is it just on new construction, or if I was going to put on like a Four Seasons room and I have to get a permit from the city to add on to my house, would that trigger these rules to be considered?
Yeah, so this is going to apply for all new single and two-family residential developments that are of 10 or more lots in size. So if you're in an existing home,
Yep.
you wouldn't be addressing any of this sort of stuff. This is
Gotcha.
going to be early on in the development phase of the subdivision, handling all that sort of stuff, and then when the building permits come in to build the actual home itself. But if you had an older home, something built, you move into it and you want to do this addition, that's not going to, I guess a question might be is, if you have a home that was built under these codes, and then for some reason you want to do something to the home that then removes something that was built under these codes, that could come into play. I don't think that would be something that would come up often.
Yeah.
But
I
it
missed
could.
the 10 lot thing, so that helps. Thank you.
Yes, it would be for a minimum of 10 lots. So, somebody wanting to split off a piece of land and just build their house on it on some acreage or something, or whatever the case is, it probably wouldn't apply. It's going to be, we're really looking at when the repetitiveness happens when we're seeing many lots, and then, there's 2 or 3 different home types that get repeated several times over, either immediately next to each other and then it's only different in the paint scheme, or one little small changes, or you have one house and then a different house and then that same house from before is repeated immediately after it again. And we understand it is about efficiency on the building side and trying to make a project that pencils. However, we think it's important that it's being addressed. The fact that the city is going to be identified with the neighborhoods that are created in it, and that's kind of something that I think has a lot of value. So we kind of look at it from a different angle, but yeah, it would be kind of on those larger subdivisions that it would apply to mostly.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Townsend?
Thank you. So to follow up on that question, so how does this impact approved plats that haven't started construction yet? Are there, that may not even have plans, I guess, is in the process done yet? So how would this apply to those developments?
That's a great question. So the intent would be if this still has to go to the city council for 2 readings, so there's a little bit of time left in our process. The intent would be that assuming the city council were to adopt it, the effective date that we would write in that ordinance, anything that was platted prior to the passage of this ordinance would be exempt. That's how we've handled UDC amendments before. The most recent one that we did several years ago was sidewalk requirements for the width. So there's subdivisions that were grandfathered in. Most of those have been built out by now, but there was a handful of subdivisions that still had the ability to do 4-foot sidewalks, even though the standard had changed to 5. The same would go for any active preliminary plats out there. Any new preliminary plat that is filed after that date this would automatically apply. So there's a handful of projects out there that I think we have 2 or 3 active preliminary plats. And then we have a handful of subdivisions that have platted lots already. So the intent would be those already platted lots would be exempt from these. Any new plats that get approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council would have to comply with these regulations.
Understanding that, thank you for that explanation. Understanding that potential impact to those future subdivisions, have you had any feedback from them in regards to what we're looking to, should this pass the commission tonight and get adopted by the council? Have you received any preliminary feedback on what this would impact, how this would impact them?
I know at the work session, we had shared what the feedback was that the builders had submitted to us. On a couple of the projects, I know that those developers indicated, they'll be able to make the lot widths work, and to accommodate and make those changes. And I think across the building community, I think we'll see that the process may be slow for the builders to kind of update whatever, plans they might need to submit to the city for these front entry features. I don't think we've gotten like an overwhelming amount of pushback that this stuff is impossible. I think it'll just be that learning curve. So yeah, that's kind of been the summary of the response so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, quick question, and I want to make sure I get to public comment if there is any.
Real quick,
before-
if I could I have my computer back? Yes.
Yep, that would be great too, because
Okay.
I was going to look at some
Yeah.
stuff on here.
Right.
Okay, so real quick, I want to follow up with something that Commissioner Townsend asked, and then I want to make sure we get to public comments if there are any that might impact additional questions from commission members. So just to clarify, because you brought up the sidewalk thing, Mr. Grass, which, I know, for example, like in Creekmore, because it's a existing development, but it's in multi-sections. And so as new areas were being platted and whatever, we implemented the 5-foot sidewalk rule. So you said preliminary, if they are a preliminary plat, Creekmore is a great example. It's a 20-year-old preliminary plat, and they come in neighborhood sections and make adjustments. If they come back with any major changes, would it then follow that, or because it would just be coming back for like a final plat approval? Because Creekmore comes, once a year and brings us another section of 12 or 20 homes or whatever, and would that then apply to them, or because their preliminary plat, that we changed a handful of years ago when they had some, townhomes or whatever that we eliminated or whatever from the plat?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was hoping for additional clarification.
So I'll use Creekmore, Saddlebrook, and Sendera are two active in Parkside. All have preliminary plats. What I meant in my comment is that those preliminary plats would be impacted by this regulation for any new final plats coming forward. So I think Parkside has an approved plat, and the first plat there, they obviously can't go back and change the lot widths to make that comply. We also wouldn't make the entry feature requirements apply to those lots as well. So any new final plats coming forward, and then any new preliminary plat that isn't already approved by the city would obviously be impacted by
So
this.
if they come in with a phase 2, phase 3, that's then where we would request the developer to make additional standards.
That's correct.
Changes. Excellent, thank you. Okay, I do have other questions, but that was one I wanted to tie into there. As I mentioned, I do want to make sure that because this is a public hearing, and any comments that might come would potentially bring up additional questions. So I do want to ask if any members of the comment would like to come forward to make a comment, please do so. Make sure the microphone is on. Please state your name and address for the record, and ideally we would request you limit it to 5 minutes, but you're the only one, so we would entertain additional time if necessary. Once the yellow light's on, then you'll be good to go.
All right. I have full confidence that I will be done within 5 minutes.
All right.
So, first of all, thank you all for having this. My name is Zach Little. I live at 121 Delaware Street, so not in over here in Raymore, but I do work for the Home Builders Association. City staff had mentioned us earlier. We would love to applaud the city staff for consistently keeping us involved in this process. When I came to this, I was told that builders would be in the room, but I'm hoping they were able to submit their testimonies online. I just want to say, again, thank you for considering the cost impacts when it comes to updated design standards, because we were just hoping that we wouldn't see just one additional government regulation that was added, which gets put on the developer, which gets put on the builder, which gets put on the consumer. So we applaud you all for considering that. And then one other little part that I would add is this monotony aspect that we keep continuously discussing, it really has impacted some of the outskirt cities within Kansas City. I do our permit report, so I kind of see the development, on the Kansas side and here on the Missouri side on some of those more suburb areas. And you do have some national builders that come into the area. They're I don't want to call it a cookie cutter home, but you can kind of get the picture. And so we believe as an HPA that this updated design standard takes our considerations. And thank you again for involving us.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Little.
Questions or anything?
Typically, we don't
know. We
ask.
don't-
Well, no, you're fine. Normally, we wouldn't ask members of the public many questions, but I would think because you're a member of the Home Builders Association, just in case there was any additional insight that people might have based on any.
And if you don't have them today, we can touch base and you can submit them to us. So
Anything just peek up real quick for anybody? No, okay.
Cool.
Thank you. I really do appreciate you coming. It's the first public comment we've had in quite a while, so I do appreciate that. All right. Any additional questions? I've got questions. I always do, but I always want to make sure other members of the commission have a moment. Okay. Couple more questions. Obviously, Mr. Little mentioned costs, impacts. I know you guys have made statements regarding costs. Obviously, things like porches, because, I think you had included in some of the images there, some of the houses that basically the porch is literally the width of the front door. There's no room for side lights. Can't even hide an Amazon package on some of these porches. And obviously, it just kind of, like you said, Mr. McCumber, it kind of takes away from the front door being kind of a feature of the home, and it's just kind of stuck on there. Obviously, there's some costs associated with some of these things. Obviously, the more grandiose, the more expensive. But has that been kind of maybe a feedback piece, or would you even say a pushback piece from, you said you maybe had 10 builders that provided some comment, and is it more just say, we'll incur some costs, we'll have to pass it on to the consumer, it's not the end of the world, or this is really an issue?
Yeah, so we had our, we called, I guess, kind of an open house with the builders. Like I said, probably a couple, maybe 24 showed up. We went through these standards, and I guess it's to kind of summarize that meeting. When we started it, it was kind of tense because they were coming into it. They didn't know what to expect, but they knew that the city was wanting to do something that was going to affect them. And so we get that relationship or whatnot. I think by the time we walked out of it, though, you could tell that the temperature in the room had kind of gone down as we had talked through and answered questions about what it is and what it is not. I think that there were some comments about cost and how the additional cost to do these will get passed down to the end buyer, which makes sense. However, as we continue to discuss it, things like stoops, things like porches, those are features that most homes do have on them, whether it is kind of the smaller Eastbrook style stoop, or whether it is a house with a wider porch across the front of it. So the cost difference really is going to be, not that there is no stoop or no porch today, is the increase in size of what our standards say versus what they're already providing. So yes, there will be a cost difference there, but it's not as if they weren't already kind of constructing these things. We're asking that they get made a size that becomes a little bit more usable and inviting of a space versus more of a either a representation of an entryway or a place where you can, it's only big enough to set your decorations in the fall and in the springtime, but not really enough space to kind of create that environment where people want to go out and spend time on their porch or see their neighbors and things of that nature. So there was a little bit of that feedback. Not a terrible amount, and like I say, the meeting at the end of it was it felt a lot more calm and understanding, I would say. In terms of feedback we got in writing, it was probably 3 or 4 different parties, and when we looked at the comments that they provided, they were essentially saying the same things. And so we had provided that to City Council at the following work session that we met with them. I think when that was the December work session that we provided that feedback. And it was things, it was around, the cost of making these changes and that it wasn't going to create what we think it's going to and things of that nature. However, we conveyed that to the city council, and now here we are, so. Anything else to add?
Yeah, if I could add one thing, because I think it's important, what Mr. McCumber mentioned early on was the path that we started to go down, which was being a little more prescriptive in saying what type of home had to be built next to one another to get, probably a more distinct picture of anti-monotony or, less monotony neighborhood. But we realized quickly that we have, a suite of builders in the community that build the homes that they build. And so we realized in a number of different ways, but one of the issues with our first path was that we were then telling a builder, we have some builders that only build single-story homes, and so the initial path was can't have too many single-story homes next to a two-story home. You have to have that kind of more monotony. And so we just realized, okay, now we're telling the builders you have to now go out, create a two-story floor plan that you can then build in this neighborhood to avoid the repetition. And so just on the comment on the cost, we realized that was a path that would have resulted in probably very significant costs to not only go in and redesign a home from the ground up, and make sure that it's a home that people want to buy. So we did pivot, as Mr. McCumber mentioned, back to you can still build the same homes that you're building nowadays, or today. Let's just figure out what these individual features would do for making the neighborhood less monotonous. Every month we, not necessarily the same concept, but we issue permits every month for covered patios, screened-in decks, and those types of things. So there's a precedent out there that those things can be designed to be put on to a newly designed home. And so that I just wanted to point that out because we did try to be respectful of the cost, knowing that the end buyer and our future residents are the ones that will end up absorbing a lot of that cost. And so that was a distinction and kind of our early on idea that just we thought would result in too significant of a cost increase, and just felt a little too prescriptive from city staff trying to say what types of floor plans were best. So I just want to add that a little bit of clarity from the history of our research.
Okay. So then, kind of associated with that, and I think I kind of answered my own question because this would be probably considered multifamily. The development, is it Ridgeview Estates? Is that considered multifamily? So that wouldn't apply because it's like 5 units in a single building or whatever. Plus they're rentals, so rentals don't apply. Is that? Well, I guess so. That's a good question. So, sorry, I'm trying not to muddy the waters too much here. Ridgeview Estates, it's considered a multifamily development. It is a senior living, but it's multifamily, so it does not apply to those standards.
Correct.
Where they all essentially have 5 or 6 patios and they're all the exact same. Okay, so that answers that question there for me. Sorry. However, if a developer came in, whether they're homes for purchase or homes for rent, if somebody wanted to put 20 rental homes in a development, would those building standards still apply to the developer and the builder, even if those homes were not being sold to individual consumers, that they were then being sold, or the developer would retain ownership and they would have ownership? So do they still follow those standards?
Yes, yeah, they would still apply there.
That's what I thought so. I guess that does kind of bring up like the 55 plus type community, like Alexander Creek, where it is it is single family, single story homes. Again, they would have to still abide by the 5-foot lot width in the front, even though essentially they're all single story on slab homes that are more or less identical, which is part of the reason we're having this conversation. In the newer portion of the development, I should say.
So your question is very similar to one that Commissioner Smith had asked after our work session, and it related to some of these regulations and more focused on the landscaping of like the effort that may be required to maintain this new landscaping in a subdivision, and the lack of interest from a retired person who maybe doesn't want all that maintenance. The thing that I feel like is important to clarify is the way these standards are written, they're for our very basic zoning districts. So to get to a development like an Alexander Creek or a Morning View or something of that nature, those are special purpose districts. They're a PUD or it's some overlay district. So the code would already provide an avenue zoning-wise to get to that type of product, and it would provide staff the opportunity and an applicant to ask for relief from one of these things. our approach would be kind of in exchange for what else would you be proposing to do? Is it, water features in the neighborhood, or, Morning View has a nice pond? Is it more hardscaping than landscaping? So it would be kind of we wouldn't necessarily support getting out of these requirements or just not doing them. We would look at what they might be proposing that would be more in line with the demographics of the neighborhood, if it is a 55 and older community, or, that's really the only specific demographic example I can come up with, but I don't know if that answers your question, but there's other avenues in which a developer could propose to do something of similar quality that may not be the exact same thing that we've written into the code.
No, that is perfect, because that's one of my concerns, and like you said, the PUD for a senior 55 plus would help provide an avenue. Okay, I've got one more question, and then I'll let other members, or we get into a vote, so I do apologize. Plants, landscaping, obviously I brought up and multiple points during our joint session, and I appreciate that you guys have added the consideration of the 3-gallon option. There was a member of the public that made a comment after the meeting about, I do landscaping and I could easily just throw $43 grass pieces in there and meet the mark, minus the one, required shade tree. Has there been any consideration regarding maybe a minimum or a maximum per category to prevent that, or is this kind of let's start here and see where this goes? Because like I said, somebody could put in their shade tree for 10 and then meet the 30 minimum of a bunch of $3 grasses that are going to die 6 weeks after they're put in, whereas that 3-gallon shrub might cost them $40, so they're not going to put that expense because they're fronting the bill up front, and obviously they're going to pass it on to the consumer. But it would be nice if people would spend a little bit more on the actual development of the landscaping project, as opposed to, hey, what's the cheapest route that I can possibly do to meet the absolute minimum? Because that's part of where some of this anti-monotony stuff comes from, is some builders say, what's the least requirement that I have to do for the cheapest possible thing in order to get this accomplished? And we're just gonna, I know we're kind of moving the goalposts, but they're still gonna potentially find that avenue, so.
I think you'll find in any of our code requirements, there's always the individual that will take the path of least, or they'll do the bare minimum that's required. Our intent really, or the thought behind this, is that builders are already generally doing the minimum. They're planting the one tree. There's a few out there that will do more, some of the pictures that we had shown. And then even after the fact, there's residents that will put a little bit more into their house. So, our hope is that by raising the minimum, as a whole, even if people still follow the minimum is still better than where we're at. And whether we, the plan would probably be to observe this over the next year and just kind of see how the building community reacts to it. This staff thinks that this solves a lot of the issues that we're seeing, or at least helps them. It's not going to solve all the issues that we have in the community, though, with relation to our growth. So I think that would be kind of our position, is we'll kind of wait and see how the community responds to that. Because I think, even if we went the route of the maximums or minimums per category, you would still find the people that would find the ultimate calculation in there of how I can maximize my dollar, and that's what I'm going to do. But I think your point is well taken, that even though the minimum is rising, hopefully the minimum is still what a lot of people may shoot for, which is fine. There's other areas out there where people will exceed or not exceed the other development requirements that will offset that as well.
Because I just think of which I like I said, I love that you guys added the 3-gallon. I think about when I go to Suburban or to Countryside or whatever, Creekside, and you look at the plants, that little 1-gallon grass is $5, but a 3-gallon butterfly bush is $65 or whatever the number is. Obviously that 3-gallon has a better chance of surviving and is going to look a heck of a lot better, but there's a $62 difference. So somebody in theory could put in 31-gallon things to get that 30 points there, and then they get their one shade tree, boom, we did our 40 points and we're done. 30 grasses along the side of someone's house does diddly squat to provide any real reasonable landscaping. Obviously, we would hope that the landscaper that they hire puts in a little bit of effort and says, well, we'll at least do 15 of these and 15 of those, but
I know the other, and we had this question after our meeting as well, was about that landscape diagram that we had put up. And I know there was a note on tonight's that that's just an illustration of one combination of plants and kind of where they could be on a property. The other thing that pops into my mind as you're kind of talking about that would be, even if somebody chose 40 or I guess 30 grasses, even where there's no requirements on where they put those. So even if they chose to, they could cluster those all together, that would look a lot different than if they lined their foundation landscaping. And so I think that was kind of the intent behind our openness of the requirement of, here's your points, go meet it how you see fit in terms of what you plant and where you plant it. After a year, we may realize that, we need to go back and maybe cap some of those if we're not getting the results that we're seeing.
Maximum per variety of plant of,
Right.
Okay, that works for me as long as there's kind of we'll look at it kind of thing, so, awesome. I never did properly close the public hearing, and since there's nobody else, I will go ahead and do that formally at 6:40.
Mr. Chair, before we officially close it, I do
Yeah.
need to give a staff recommendation.
Oh, that's fine, I was just closing the public comment portion.
And making sure all of your council, or your chairman.
Well, I was gonna do
commission
that too,
members
but the public comment, just since there's nobody, I just wanna make sure that we don't forget that. But yeah, so I do wanna make sure members have another chance or additional chances to ask questions before we go through the formal recommendation and then wrap it all up. So, any other questions from commission members? All right, Mr. Cumber, thank you, sir.
All right, staff recommends a motion to accept the proposed findings of fact and forward case 26002, the 38th Amendment to the Unified Development Code to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
All right, since we've gone through the public hearing, gone through commission member questions and comments, and we've received the staff recommendation, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Townsend.
I motion that we accept the proposed findings of fact and forward case number 26002, 38th Amendment to Unified Development Code to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Townsend, second by Commissioner Shanks for the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the proposed findings of fact and forward case 26002, 38th Amendment to the Unified Development Code to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion of the motion? Yes, sir, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, sir. Just a real quick comment to staff and to the work you put into this particular amendment, working with the Builders Association, the builders, getting their input, and it just wasn't a staff input, but you're actually getting input from the layman in the field, considering the financial impacts not only to them but to the consumer in the end, but also developing a product that creates a uniquely designed homes, setbacks, the materials that are used, and so it's not, as the gentleman said from the Home Builders Association, a community of cookie-cutter homes. It makes it more neighborly, makes it more friendly, makes it more attractive. As we grow and as we move, as the city begins to get more single-family homes, I think this makes a better product for Raymore. And so I really appreciate the effort that has gone into this. And should it pass with the council, should it pass today out of the commission and get adopted by the council, I really think it'd be an excellent product going forward as our city continues to get new development and more development in the area. So again, thank you for the work.
Thank you. Any additional comments on the motion? Thank you, Mr. Townsend. All in favor? That will pass unanimously. Thank you. 7-0. Excellent discussion. Thank you, guys. All right, get to the top of the page here. So that concludes new business. We will now move into item 8, our city council report. Mr. Zur, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Wiggins. Since your last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, there's been one legislative session for the Raymore City Council. Occurred on February 23rd. During the course of that meeting, there were 3 items of interest for the commission. The first is the appeal of the site plan application denial for the 7 Brew Coffee. It had a second reading and was voted to deny the appeal, 6-2 vote, basically upholding the commission's original decision. So that was the first item that was of interest. The next one is the approval of the Raymore Commerce Center South Final Plat, Lot 2. This is the Van Trust Real Estate, the Lot 2, which is the northwest corner of the overall development, and construction of it. It's the second building within the Raymore Commerce Center South. You all approved that at your February 17th, 2026 meeting by a vote of 6-0. It received unanimous vote of the City Council for its first reading. Likewise, for first reading, there was the Creekside Ranch final plat. This is lots 2 through 20, located at the northeast corner of Gore Road and Kurzwell Road. The request included 19 residential lots of approximately 3+ acres each. That would conclude the City Council report. I always invite Mayor as well as Mr. Gress to provide any additional input based upon their observations or recollection from each of the meeting.
Thank you, sir. As always, Mayor Turnbow.
Nothing further, yeah.
Staff, anything to add to Mr. Zerger's report? Otherwise, I will turn it over for the staff report to Mr. Gress.
At your chairs there was a copy of the February department report. So just a couple things I wanted to highlight. We did finish last month with 15 new single-family homes. Again, this was scattered across Alexander Creek, Parkside, Prairie View, and Creekmore, so again, across all areas of the city. Looking at the year-to-date, we are just a little bit ahead of where we were this time last year with 27 permits for the calendar year, so we're on track kind of with the same level of activities we had last year, which is good. Couple updates on some recent projects. The commission late last year actually approved the branched out plaza site plan there behind Casey's off of Madison. If you've driven past that area, they have started construction. They've got some site utilities going in and kind of working on the detention basin, I think, back there right now. And we did issue the building permit for that project here at the end of last month. So be likely you'll see some vertical construction here in the next several weeks. A couple of new businesses that we did also issue occupancy permits for. Right across the street here at 242 Broadmoor, it used to be the old urgent care. One building that was split up into 3 tenant spaces, which was good, so 2 more tenant spaces we didn't have before. Most recently, we issued the occupancy permit for Nervology. It's a new chiropractic office in town. And then Mana Auto Sales, which is over off of Walnut Street and kind of back behind Harmon Tire. It's a kind of a light used car dealer over there. They do more online sales than anything, but they had gone through the process for a variance of use with our Board of Adjustment late last year and just finally got to the end of their project with all their improvements on the site. So they're now able to open for business as well. In terms of meetings coming up, we do right now at least have a reason to meet on March 17th. So if you could put that on your calendars, and staff will reach out if we end up pushing that meeting, if there's anything that comes up. But it looks like we will have a need to meet for a meeting on that date. And that, I think, would conclude staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any members have any questions for Mr. Gress?
Will we have any green beer at the next meeting?
See what we can do.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Perry, sir.
Sure, I do have a few comments tonight on some projects starting soon and to bring awareness to. On Thursday, March 5th, a contractor will be repairing the road at the Gore and Kurzwell intersection. There'll be traffic control and flaggers in the area starting at 9 a.m. Thursday and Friday next week, we'll have a contractor completing signal work at Dean and North Cass. So just if you're driving in that area, watch out. And then finally, we have a company from Austin, Texas coming in next week for a pavement condition index. That'll provide us a lot of data for our road conditions in the city and help us plan out our paths forward over the next few years. I say this because they come in a van with a bunch of interesting cameras and stuff all over it, and they'll drive up and down every single road in the city. So many residents will see them and wonder what it is.
So check your Ring cameras.
Sure. So Melissa will be putting something out Thursday or Friday this week, and that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Just for clarification, that Kurzwell and Gore intersection, is that like where that, I know you and I have talked about that after they ran something under the road dips down real far. Is that?
Yes, sir. Yep. They'll be fixing that dip and getting that ready. And then actually we have we'll be milling and overlaying Gore Road later this year. So.
Okay. Kurzwell, sorry to kind of add on to that. Obviously, all the markings on the road and the survey stakes that have been there. Any particular update? I know that's kind of a TBD.
Yeah, we're moving along in the design process, and there'll be more information come soon.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Perry and his department? Very good. That will conclude staff reports. We always offer public comment at the end of the meeting, so if anybody has any comments, get a thumbs up, so I guess we're good there. Commission member comments. I'm going to start over with Mr. Shanks, sir.
You caught me off guard.
I know. Well, it's so unbalanced.
Yeah.
It's going to be random.
I just felt like tonight was an exceptionally good meeting. I thought that the preparation, the printout, the time that you guys put in your presentation, the public comments, everything was really, really good. I would say that I'll be interested to know, I guess, in the long run, how the point system on the landscaping works. I'm hopeful, like you said, if nothing else, it just kind of raises the tide, right? So there's just the floor is now higher than it was. It would be interesting to know that if that's not going far enough at some point, what maybe doing like linear feet of like the front of the house or the sides of the house that have to have beds installed, thinking that plants to the commissioner's point can like die off in 6 weeks or whatever. But if you had a bed installed, that's a little bit more permanent, kind of like we talked about the front porch stoop being something that, you can't just take that off, or whatever. So it would be staying with the property maybe on a longer term basis. But yeah, that would be my only maybe thought or recommendation to consider if this wasn't taking it far enough. But I'm hopeful that it will be. Yeah, just again, thanks for all the hard work and putting into tonight's meeting.
Thank you, sir. To my left, Vice Chair Pfizer.
Okay, well, you know how I love to plug things that are going on in the city.
Please.
So lately, when I get home from work, my husband says, "What do you want for dinner?" And I say, "I don't know. What do you want for dinner?" We get very wishy-washy about this. And so we've started doing this thing where let's try the local places in town and that we honestly have ignored really since we've lived here. And so we've been trying to at least once a weekend go to the local place in town. And we've had some really good ones. We've had some that were kind of so-so. But everywhere we've gone, the staff and the people working there have been amazing. Everybody is so friendly and so outgoing that even if we're like, the food's so-so, we'll go back because they were so welcoming and friendly. So I encourage everyone to try all the local places in town. Let's, encourage small businesses, and that's my plug.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you. To my immediate right, Commissioner Harrison.
I've got nothing tonight.
All right, all the way at the end, Commissioner Parker.
Well, Commissioner Pfizer, we'll have to get that list of restaurants from you at some point because I'm very interested in that. I want to thank the staff for coordinating the work session a couple of weeks ago in January that helped lay the groundwork for us and established my knowledge of and a number of our knowledge of the most recent, the Unified Development Code changes that you're wanting to make. So appreciate everyone's work on that.
Commissioner Townsend, sir.
Thank you. Nothing to add additional, but just as a update, I will be earning my Sea Service Deployment ribbon because I'm going to be on a cruise on the 17th, so I will not be here for that, so sorry about that.
Thank you for the advance notification, sir. Mayor Turnbow, sir.
Yeah, I want to say how much I appreciate the commission's recognition of the work that staff did on this. I know coming in here almost daily, not very long every day, but for a little bit, sometimes longer than I want to be here, but I know that staff works very hard on these types of projects and has had their feet held to the fire, not by just the commission, but by the city council as well on this particular issue. And I appreciate the dedication that they do when faced with these types of challenges. We've got a great staff, and I appreciate the work that they do. I really do. And I don't have anything else to add this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple quick comments. Obviously, on the 17th, that is St. Patrick's Day, so maybe wear some green. Maybe we can figure out a way to. Although I don't think the police department would appreciate us, having a tailgate party in the parking lot, but maybe we can find another place to have a green beer or something. Mr. Little, I do appreciate you coming tonight. It is nice to hear not only public comment, but people within the industry coming forward and providing comment to us. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Townsend, second by Vice Chair Pfizer. All in favor of adjournment? We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.